EXPs, I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight for this very special pop-up discussion. I've been putting in work, guys. I had a discussion last night and I'm having one tonight, but nonetheless, my main reason for doing all of this is just making sure we have value-added conversations. I provide you guys with awesome content, and we are shedding light on the things that matter, not only within the society, but within the experiential marketing industry as well as EXPs. So tonight, I'm going to be bringing my very special guest on, Ashley Wall, in a very few minutes to talk about what it means to work as a client within the experiential marketing industry. As always, Jay has her house rules. So before we get started, I want to encourage all of you to drop your names in the comments. Let us know where you are tuning in from. Also, questions for Ashley. It's rare, but we're going to start having more clients on within the EXP Elite community. But this is one of the rare occasions where we do. So EXPs, Experiential Marketing Agency, staffing agencies, if you have any clients, if you have any questions for Ashley, please drop them in the comments, because I plan to cover a lot tonight with regards to clients from an EXP standpoint, from an agency standpoint, and ultimately from a staffing standpoint as well. So drop your thoughts in the comments. If you have something that you want to add to this conversation, make sure you leave a comment so myself and Ashley can work to get through it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Ashley on, and she's going to talk a little bit about herself, and we're going to dive right into these questions.
Hi there.
All right, Ashley. So go ahead, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role at Buffalo Wild Wings and why you wanted to come on tonight and just talk more from the client perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, everyone. As she mentioned, my name's Ashley. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I'm currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. I have roughly 10 years experience in the marketing world, experiential world. I've done a variety of things: food and beverage, retail, obviously the restaurant industry with my current position. I've done event management, sports and entertainment, partnerships and sponsorships. Activation, project management, you name it. I've done it all in the short 10 years of my career. So my current role, I am a sports partnership manager for Buffalo Wild Wings. What that means is I basically lead the national and local sports sponsorship strategy and activation. That can range anything from, partner identification, program development, execution of events, whether that's in sports bar or even on-site with experiential activation. So, I've done some work on the sports side of things. So I actually haven't been on the client side all my life and all my career. I've worked for the Omaha Storm Chasers, which is the minor league of the Kansas City Royals. So I've done events and promotions for them as well. I've worked at a shopping center and done events for them. So I haven't always been on the client side. So you asked me why I wanted to be here. I can kind of provide a little bit of both sides to that story, and what it's like now working on the client side as I haven't always been there. So and sports partnerships, I get a lot of questions like what that is, and it's the fun stuff.
So go ahead, if you can, explain what sports partnerships means, mm-hmm. and why Buffalo Wild Wings has decided to dive into experiential marketing. Because for a lot of Fortune 500 companies, the term experiential marketing is still green to them. They don't know what it means. They don't know what activation entails, and why it's advantageous to invest in experiential marketing, even though everything's getting back to normal now. But just talk through that and talk to us and tell us why consumer interaction, consumer engagement is essential.
Yeah, so sports partnerships, Buffalo Wild Wings is a national chain, national sports bar chain. We have roughly 1,200 locations throughout the country. So we also are in Canada, and we're also throughout the world. We have multiple locations in different countries as well. But here in the US, I do a lot of national as far as the US goes. And sports partnerships, people get it confused. A partnership versus a sponsorship. A partnership is truly mutually benefiting both parties, whereas a sponsorship is really just a one-time transaction to kind of get access to that relationship. So majority of everything we do is a partnership, especially in the sports world. We can mutually benefit both parties. Since we are at that scale, we also carry a lot of benefits for our partners as well. So I get a lot of questions, partnership versus sponsorship. What does that mean? Buffalo Wild Wings, we really try to dive into just partnerships and sports partnerships. So, I said all the fun stuff. So imagine like the NFL is, a potential partner. If we were to sign with the NFL, I'd be the one to manage that partnership and kind of bring that partnership to life, which kind of leads to, what you were talking about, like why it's important for Buffalo Wild Wings. It's really, a partnership is, to a lot of people, just a contract, and you fulfill assets and that sort of thing. But it really is bringing to life, a relationship and engaging a consumer and associating yourself with another partner and another brand. So it's important for us as a brand, at the sports bar level and at a national level across the board to engage with consumers. Again, in our sports bar, on-site at events, it's really the kind of first touch point that a lot of consumers, they connect with us. It's really the first touch point. So, and a lot of people, used to go to Buffalo Wild Wings and they haven't gone in a while. And it's really even our, second touch point to them to reintroduce them to our brand again. So very important for us. It's a part of our strategy. It will continue to be a part of our strategy, especially in the sports world. And it's cross-functionally across our business. We try to bring that partnership to life.
So in bringing that partnership to life, why did Buffalo Wild Wings choose to use experiential marketing and consumer events as a way to do so?
I think that's just one of the ways to, you can do activation through advertising campaigns and digital, and, you can do all of PR, buzz, all of that stuff, but to really reach your consumer, and again, to touch those people in a way that, you can get on their level and relate to them is super important to us. We are a partner with the NCAA. So one of our major and our largest on-site activations of the year, we are at Final Four weekend, and we, have this huge built-out space, and it's really a time for, us to get close to our consumers and really bring them into the brand. And hey, have fun. They get to have fun with it and have fun with our brand. So for us being a sports bar and the fun, we're not a bank, we're a sports bar. So it's super important to get at that level with our consumers.
So moving more towards the question of hiring a experiential marketing agency to put a RFQ request for quote, or RFP, request for price together. EXPs, for those of you who don't know what those terms means, it's essentially a deck that an experiential marketing agency creates, which they pitch and sell to Ashley for potential activation, for potential tours, for potential programs. So Ashley, talk with me and talk through Buffalo Wild Wings and even your process using experiential marketing agencies to come on and execute activations and tours.
Yeah. So we treat activation, on-site is just a component of it. We treat activation across our brand, like I mentioned, TV, how we activate digitally and TV, and, through buzz and activation and PR stunts. We kind of treat activation across the whole business. So I think that's what makes us probably a little bit different than some other corporations. We actually have a handful of agencies throughout, especially our marketing department. That's media agency. We have a creative brand agency, activation, PR. We have we have all sorts of agencies within our marketing department. So normally in the corporate world, a media agency is assigned to the media, and an activation agency is assigned to the activation, and they're only to be ideating, on their specific silo. Yeah, exactly. So how we operate, and this is probably just within the last few years, we've really kind of rethought how we ideate and how we pull in agencies. What starts with us, what starts with an agency. And really in the last couple of years, we've kind of switched over to who has the best idea. I mean, I think agencies now have to not only think about on-site activations, they have to think about how you can activate an idea across the entire business. So I think that's what we're starting to move towards. Our media agency, could have a incredible idea that turns into a partnership, that turns into an on-site activation, that turns into a TV campaign. So I think, when we go through an RFP process, I think the most important thing for us, not only in the activation world, but any of our other departments would tell you this, that they have to be able to think holistically across the brand and across the business. On-site is just one facet of it and one part of it. How are they, going to get a big PR buzz idea out of this? How are they going to bring a TV campaign to life, or an idea that will get the creative or the advertising team to start thinking on? I think is super important throughout the RFP process. And how we've handled it in the last few years is really just like, hey, agencies, we have an idea for, we really want to activate around the Masters. Give us your best ideas. So that's kind of how we like to approach it. And I know that's not how a lot of corporate worlds tend to operate, but it's worked out really well for us. It's gotten us a lot of great ideas from a lot of agencies who probably would have been like, that's not my silo. That's not, where we should be spending our effort. But I do really think it's a holistic thought process that you really need to think about when you go into an RFP.
And how do you keep from, because I've seen it a lot of times where an agency may be hired by a client because they have a friend that works for the company. So automatically they get the bid for the contract to execute the tour of the program. So how do you align with the right agency to make sure that they have the same mission, the values that Buffalo Wild Wings encompasses? Do you have, or how do you prevent the nepotism that may come up?
Yeah, and I think that's only natural, right? I think we're drawn to people who we've worked with and who think like us, and whether that's the right way or not, it gets a foot in the door. It's just like any job interview, who gets you the furthest. So I think, an agency, if they're trying to pitch new clients, really have to work on building that relationship years in advance. Our current sports activation agency, we've been with close to 10 years. And that's because we knew their work through another client. They used to work on Coca-Cola, and we knew them. We started building that relationship prior to us even signing them. So it was a natural slot in when they decided to start pitching us ideas, and an RFP came through. And so I think it's super important to build a relationship prior to even going for an RFP. I do think that's very important. And because, this industry sometimes hires based on credibility, based on, the brands that you've worked with in the past and who you know, and building relationships in this industry is huge. So,
and how do you pivot when, let's say you may have been working with an account manager at an agency, but that account manager leaves. So when changes occur within an agency and you already have an established relationship with that agency, but turnover or people leave, like how do you continue to build on that relationship, even though that account manager that you may have been working with may not be there?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like I said, we've been with our activation agency 10 years, and we've just built such a strong relationship. We've been fortunate enough to have the same account partners. So we haven't had to deal with that a lot. And I think that goes to show on both sides, that we respect our relationship with that sports activation agency, and that agency respects the relationship they have with us. They clearly like us, so they're staying around. So I think what's important is for agencies to think about building those relationships with other people on their team. So a lot of times, you'll have a VP of an account work with the VP of, of the client side, and they're, buddy, and then the VP leaves either or, and we're back to square one. But bringing in other people at a manager level, a coordinator level, an assistant level, building those. I have close relationships with our on-site partners, making sure that everyone is building a relationship and not just at that leadership level. I think because on the client side, as a manager, you would think like she doesn't have a lot of pull. Yeah. That's director, VP, president, CMO. They all decide that stuff. We really don't. When you sit in a room and you say, I like these people, their work is good, they've worked with other clients that we know, that at the end of the day, that's the perfect combination to creating a relationship that will last.
Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk from an EXP standpoint, from a tour manager like myself, or a brand ambassador, someone who executes events consistently and engages with consumers and has experience in the field. When you receive an RFP from a experiential marketing agency, and they include various prospects, various tour managers or assistant tour managers who are qualified for your particular program, what are some of the things that you're looking at in that RFP when you're considering potential candidates?
Yeah. Knowledge of the brand is obviously huge. I mean, you kind of relate this into, you're going into an interview for the job. You have to know the brand. So knowing the brand is obviously base level. Now, being passionate about the brand, I know from sitting in RFPs, you can tell who's just trying to get this account for, to build their portfolio versus someone who really believes in the brand and believes, in the product, and not something they can just add to their portfolio. You really can, sitting on the client side, that you can tell who's, BSing and who's not. So I think, knowledge of the brand, making sure that you're very well versed in the brand, things they're doing well and things that they can improve upon, and genuinely being interested and passionate about wanting to be a part of that brand and building that relationship with that brand.
So because as a tour manager, right? Oftentimes I don't meet the client until I am hired for the position and I'm either at training at a fabrication facility, or you come on site to the activation. So how do you, or sometimes the agency requires that you interview with the client, right? Or they choose you, and the client has a say in whether you are chosen for a management position or to execute a tour. So in your experience, how do you go about choosing an EXP? And I know Jason Woods,
my buddy,
he's your manager for the longest, but how will you go about in the event that Jason leaves? Like, do you require that you interview EXPs before choosing a agency and ultimately a tour manager to execute that tour? Or do you get vibes like, okay, this agency put together an awesome RFP, their energy is good, so I know that they're going to bring the best EXPs out to execute this tour? How do you go about choosing that person when I'm not going to say you don't have an interview with me prior, but if you don't interview me and you come on site?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. And please don't, Jason, if you're watching, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me.
He said he would be tuning in tonight. So he's
okay. Jason, you're watching. Don't leave me. Yeah. So how we handle it, and I can't speak to all client side, but, and why I kind of stress the importance of building an agency building a relationship with the client, as much as, a tour manager building a relationship with an agency, because how we handle it on our end is we really do rely on our agency. To your point, we're not out there interviewing tour managers, brand ambassadors, MCs. We definitely have a say in it. We have a say in, what we're looking for, and we want people who are excited and passionate, and we want people who can speak to the brand. But we decide, and the agency brings us those candidates, and we decide, candidates down to uniforms. We decide everything when it comes to being a part of our on-site activation, because we truly do want someone who represents our brand. I mean, you putting that logo on your shirt, a Buffalo Wild, the consumer doesn't know that that person was hired by an outside agent. They don't know that. They know that, like, you're associated with Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm on site at a Buffalo Wild Wings event. If I have a bad experience here, I'm gonna have a bad experience at a Buffalo Wild Wings. So again, truly, we're choosing someone that represents our brands. So, when an RFP process comes up, we truly are choosing an agency that represents our brand, and we are trusting our agency to bring in tour managers and brand ambassadors and MCs who truly represent our brand. So it's kind of a domino effect, knowing that as a client, I don't get to meet directly with the tour managers until, again, to your point, on site usually. But we trust our agency enough to build those relationships with those brand ambassadors and those tour managers, MCs, and so forth, that we can fully trust when they bring us the candidates for being our tour managers.
That's good insight. Yeah. EXPs, as I always say, you are a brand within a brand. So you have to not only represent yourself, but represent the client and the agency accordingly, because oftentimes, we get caught up in, what we have going on. And believe me, as a tour manager, before you get on site, Ashley, there are a million things.
I've not been a tour manager, but I have been boots on the ground at an event, and I was like, I'm on the client side now. I could just walk right in. You guys make it look so easy, and I feel for that, because I have been boots on the ground. It's like days and days in advance, before a client walks on site. So
and talk a little bit about your experience as a tour manager, because a lot of EXPs don't have are not fortunate enough to have clients who understand what it's like to be boots on the ground. So I've had clients that come on site and micromanage and have high expectations based on an RFP. But when I come on site and I'm like, look, I understand, I'm going to work to do my best to deliver this for you, but it's not going to be easy, or this is the best way we're going to be able to approach that. I get some conflict, or some, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but some pullback sometimes. But once the event is over, or they see why I may have did something a certain way, or why we moved the footprint to this area and instead of this area, it makes sense at the end. But initially, it doesn't make sense for a lot of clients. So kudos to you for being one of the people that actually have worked in the field and understand. So talk a little bit about your experience from that standpoint.
Yeah, so I've done, I mentioned one of my first jobs was a minor league team. If you've ever worked for a sports team, it's long days, it's long hours. I mean, especially for baseball, you can go on, 12 game stretches, working morning till night. So, I've had to put together promotions. I've had to put together on-site games or on-field games. I've had to set up booths and do tables and kick tables and haul them around and, sweat my butt off. And I've had to do all of that. And I do think that it has helped me, to your point, understand what these, on-site experiential marketing professionals are going through. I think that, I do wish that a lot of people in these positions who are doing on-site experience would have had that experience. I hope that they would have, because it truly is trusting your agency and trusting your on-site team now to make those decisions that's best for the brand. Again, being a representation of the brand. I think, there comes a time when I've had this too, and I've had pushback too. I can give an example. So if Jason's on, he's going to laugh. But we on site at Final Four, we have the Blazing Challenge. So if you're a fan of Buffalo Wild Wings, it's 12 of the hottest wings. 6 minutes, you're timed. Well, we took a spin on it last year, and we decided to do a tag team Blazing Challenge. So we decided to have teams. They can tag in and out like wrestling style. It was on a wrestling style, what are they called? ring.
Yeah, the ring. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they would take in and out and they had to eat, I think it was 20 wings between the two of them in 10 minutes. And so again, taking in and out, you could tell they were starting to get sick. They were starting to not feel well.
How many teams was it?
Yeah. What'd you say?
How many teams was it?
Oh, it was two people on each team, and there was 2 teams going back and forth. They're trying to race to finish. Yeah, the quickest. Between the 2 of them on a team, you can tag in and out. And we're like, this is the first time we've done this. This isn't a standard Blazing challenge, and we're on site, like watching this unfold from a client. I mean, I have the tour managers there. I have our agency there, being like, oh gosh, like how is this gonna go? We can tell they're starting to get they're sweating, they're hot, eating all the wings. You can tell they're starting to not feel well. Wow. So we're like, we didn't really think of a backup plan in case what we call the reversal of fortune happens. Ooh. And, we had to think pretty quickly about like our CMO came in at the time where we're like, oh gosh, they're going to do the reversal of fortune, like in front of our CMO. Like, this is not how we want our brand represented. So, I mean, it was on site. Like, how can we make sure these people don't throw up? And so can we take them off stage? Can we have a bucket nearby? Can we, so there were things that we were working with our tour managers and our agency. Like what are the quick solves here? Well, our CMO comes in and says, I want to like a staging area kind of within our space that has drapes. That we can escort them there if they happen to do something. So it's not in front of the crowd. And you know what? Like it comes down to like, we hear you. I think that from my level at the manager level and a director level as well, it comes down to really resetting with your leadership. Cause I think leadership comes on board and they don't have that experience of like, we can't pull off a staging area and erect a staging area in the middle of our activation in the middle of this event. So it's really kind of setting a little bit off topic, but it's really setting the expectations with your leadership that I am, and that's on the client side. That shouldn't be a tour manager's job to do that. It should really be for us. It would be our agency's role to work with their tour managers and be that bridge between the tour managers or the BAs, hearing their concerns and really bridging the gap between tour managers and clients. Because then when that information comes to me, like that's not going to work out. Our brand ambassadors, like there's no way. Our agency's like there's no way we can build this, staging area. Yeah. I get that information, then I have to set those expectations with our leadership. And I think that's why a lot of clients freak out. Well, my CMO needs this staging area. And it's like, if I can understand your reasoning why this won't work from your level of things, and I know that because I've been on that level. So, the communication there is not as difficult, but telling me the reasons why this won't work instead of just like, we're not going to do it. But then me trusting that our agency who has trusted the tour managers to give their, insight on why this won't work. And then me setting up those expectations. So I think when you're thinking of it at that level, it's important to just set those expectations. Hey, we've done everything we can do. We hear our solutions. We can't do X, but we can do Z. I think that's helpful to have the agency because the agency also does not want to look bad to a client. So it's a domino effect kind of in the reversal. So I think if you can set those expectations with your agency that you're working with, we can't do X, Y, Z, but we can do this, and here's some solutions, or, straight up, this is why we can't do it. And hopefully if you have the right agency above you, your agency will, understand that and translate that into the client who can then translate it to their leadership. So I think it's a domino effect. And I think just the way you set up those conversations that I've tried my hardest, we don't know what we can do. I think that's okay. So having a good relationship with your agency is key as well.
And with regards to having that relationship, how do you feel or how do you handle communicating with the tour managers on site? Because oftentimes when someone like yourself, a client comes on site, the account manager or the account coordinator may also come on site to serve as that liaison between the tour manager and yourself, the client. So do you prefer to communicate with the experiential marketing agency who then filters to the EXP, the tour manager, or do you have direct communication with the tour
Yeah,
manager?
that's a good question. I can only speak to my experience. I know that probably some clients and corporations want it handled a lot differently. We're a very fun sports bar and a very fun team. So I like going to like our tour managers and like what's going on, like what's happening, because I think a lot of times when you're working with an agency, especially an agency that's trying to impress a client, I think there can be a little bit of padding, is what I like to call it, a little schmoozing, whatever you want to call it. And you're not getting
brown nosing.
Yeah, brown nosing. You're really not getting to what's really happening with our tour managers and our BAs and everything like that. So, Jason Woods, I go right to him all the time. We have a good relationship, and our agency doesn't feel like I'm stepping on their toes. All three entities have a really good relationship where I can go straight to a BA, I can go straight to a tour manager. And I think a lot of times too, tour managers and BAs get like intimidated by a client.
Yes. It's like if they know you're coming, or if for tour managers, if we haven't seen you at training or we don't know how you look, and we hear from an account coordinator or a senior account manager that the client's going to be on site, our ears are already on alert to make sure that everything is buttoned up. But I'm going to say this, if you are a seasoned EXP and a vetted EXP and one who prides himself on doing quality work regardless, when you hear that a client is going to be coming, you're not going to change the day-to-day operations in the way in which you manage your program, you train your BAs, because you're going to be doing the same thing that you would be doing as if they were not coming.
Yes.
For some EXPs who try to beat the system, who don't do things the right way, for them, they get intimidated or they're nervous because they want to make sure everything is in order, which is natural. You want to make sure that the client's happy, that the agency who hired you is getting, what they paid for, is getting that value, and you keep that relationship for future opportunities. But to your point, it can be intimidating at times because you don't know what this client wants. You don't know if they're going to micromanage. You don't know if they're going to understand or have worked in the field and know what it takes to execute an event. So it can be a little intimidating, but at the same time.
And the thing that I want to point out is that, me I'm a manager level. I feel that same thing when our president is walking up. I got word that our president is coming through the space in 20 minutes. Like I go to the tour managers, I'm with the agency, like button up, like that napkin. I don't know, like button up, because our president or CMO are walking through. And we're a little bit of a smaller company. We're still nationwide and globally, but we're not, we're not huge.
Yeah.
Massive. So like, I have a relationship with a CMO and a president, and they know who I am, everything like that. But it's still a little bit like, even though they know me, you're right, it's natural to like, okay, button up everybody. And so know that the client, especially someone at like a manager, maybe even director level, has those same feelings when leadership starts to walk through the space. And that is what we're trying to translate down to the agency. Like make sure your, tour managers are set for when this happens in 20 minutes, and make sure, the BAs are set. And it's not an intention to make people nervous, but to your point, I mean, you should know the brand. We've hired you. You should know the brand. You should be passionate about the brand. If, a CMO walks right up to you and asks you a question, treat them as no other,
no consumer.
Yep, exactly. As another consumer who's, they're not doing it to test you. They're genuinely trying to come into our space and learn about experiential marketing. We know as like a partnerships team that this is extremely important to our brand. Sometimes leadership is so disconnected that they don't get it. They don't see it, but until they come on site.
Yeah.
So that is that from a client side, that's how I feel when leadership comes on site. And then that's probably, translated down from the agency to the tour managers, the BAs, they all feel it. But it's really just to make sure that this is important to us. This is from a partnership and activation standpoint. This is important to us. And we know that this drives, a return on investment. We know that this space touches our consumers, and we want to show that to leadership. And that's truly what that is. So yeah, events are fun.
I know.
I know what all I'm saying. It doesn't sound fun, but it's so fun.
They are. And the EXPs are in this group. And if you've worked any type of events, whether it's Buffalo Wild Wings or any sports related events, I always have a good time because I love those type of events because it's not as button up. You can be casual. You can have casual conversations with people. And you can really get the opportunity to engage with that person in a lax environment. So those activations are always fun.
Yeah.
And to your point, we talked about essentially what an EXP or a tour manager needs to have: professional, presentable, personable. Those are my 3 Ps. And those are the things that you as a client and agencies ultimately look for. But I want to hear from you on the don'ts. What are some things that you do not like to see, or some things that as a client, when you come on site, you immediately your ears go up and you're like, like this EXP can't be doing this, or it's considered unprofessional, or your tall tale signs as to why someone needs to be terminated, whether at the end of the activation or, at that moment.
Yeah. So this might sound like common sense. So I don't know if, your EXPers are like, well, duh, but cell phones are a huge thing. If I walk in a space and I see someone, here's the thing. They don't have to be like, woo, and like, be yourselves. And I think everyone thinks, to our point, like you have to be buttoned up and you have to have this huge smile and amazing energy and just be yourself. But being yourself without your cell phone would be appreciated. If I come into my space, if I'm arriving at Final Four weekend, our tour managers, our agencies, they've been on site for 4 days prior, and I arrive on a Thursday and we're going to do our walkthrough. And there's BAs on site and there's tour managers. If I see anyone not engaged already, that is an issue for me. Now, and when I come in and there's people there and they're not engaged, or they're distracted, or they're on their phones. I know that's like a 101 of events is your phones are away, your phones are in the back. There's no temptation. But even, and I'm talking distraction, like a hand on a hip, like just kind of, we can sense it. Like you walk into a space and I can sense that you don't want to be either at that part of the activation or you don't want to be here in general. So distraction is, whether that's a phone or just you're somewhere else or you just don't even want to be there. That's a huge, I would not say fireable offense, but that is something I would go to a tour manager or an agency and be like, hey, we can't have this representation of our brand. I need energy. I need passion.
You got to engage. You got to
engagement. And that's what we've hired you to do. And, when I see a good set of BAs on site or tour managers, they're corralling their BAs, they're, getting them excited, they're making them want to be there. So it's really truly a reflection. If I see BAs that are just like not engaged, my thought goes, okay, well, how did this tour manager prep these BAs for this on-site activation? Jason Woods, he's really great. He rounds up all his people and he gets them hyped and want to be there and handshaking, hugging. I mean, it's on-site activations are supposed, well, at least in my industry, they're supposed to be fun. I mean, they get you out of your everyday routine. And that's what we need our consumers to also say is, wow, I had fun at that event because that person had fun. So as far as no's, that's huge pet peeves of mine, and just distraction, whether that's phone, majority, it's phones usually, or they're in the back and they're just like, it's just because as clients too, like, we walk back a house, I see every part of the activation. So I get that you can't be on all the time, but just not engaged is one of my big pet peeves. I will say what I enjoy about BAs and the BAs that I usually, and tour managers that I really appreciate are the ones who, they're assigned to a certain space within their activation, but they go out of their way to do something else. I saw a BA at our Final Four activations, cleaning up garbage. We're a restaurant industry. We're serving wings. It's messy. It's sloppy. There's garbage all over the place. Picking up garbage. Like, we hire a garbage service, but someone who's that attentive to an overall activation is something I can appreciate and would encourage other BAs, just because it's not within your siloed, where you've been assigned to stand, or, do other BAs need help? Are there places within the activation that needs my attention? I think those are the BAs and the tour managers that I can always appreciate. And it always reflects back on the tour managers, and then back on the agency. And so that's,
Yeah. The great tour managers that execute events understand the importance of training, of setting those expectations early, and having, for the most part, a no-nonsense mentality. Get it. We will have fun, but the main thing and the main premise as to why we're there is to make sure that the client is happy and that the execution or the activation goes as planned. So tour managers that have been executing tours and managing programs, understand that it's not just one approach, it's a well-rounded approach, and making sure that you set those expectations, that you train your EXPs initially, that you convey the importance of being on time, of not being on your cell phones. And oftentimes, I've had to fire EXPs prior to the client coming, because I knew that if that client saw that EXP, especially at areas where data capture and registration are essential, if you saw that EXP there, it would be an issue with the account manager, which then it would fall back on me, like you said. Yeah. So making sure as a tour manager that you set those expectations is important, because EXPs, you're hearing it not just from myself, you're hearing it from a client and the things that she looks at when she comes on site. So you definitely have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And to your point, I don't, it's funny you say I've fired, BAs and things like that before clients have even gotten on site. I would have never known that as a client, but that's, what you're doing as a tour manager, that's your responsibility to, get rid of those who aren't going to do the best job that they can for a client. So I think that's really interesting that you brought that up, because those are things that as a client, I don't even see. I walk in and I'm like, ooh, look at this. Like, they're on time. They're not on their phone. Like, I walk in and this is a sparkly activation. But the work to make sure that it is that sparkly.
And then like a lot of work, and then just making sure you have the right staff, as far as, like you said, cell phones is a big thing. Entitlement mentality, not wanting to help, not wanting to go above and beyond their roles and expectations, feeling as though they may be above a certain job. And at the end of the day, we work in an awesome industry. I love working in experiential marketing. We get paid for the most part pretty good for what our roles and responsibilities are. So coming out of that entitlement mentality and making sure we have the best collective group of EXPs is important. And when I do have those issues, of course, conveying it to the account managers, or taking it to that next step. But ultimately, we are the eyes and ears for the brand and for the agency. So oftentimes we have to make those calls last minute and make those tough decisions, especially if we know you as the client, what you expect, and overall how you want the activation to be ran.
Yeah. And that's a really good point that you brought that up. That's one of the earliest, when I was boots on the ground for events, that's one of the earliest things I was taught, is that you're not above anything. It's a mentality that a lot of people in the client world still have. Our president, he comes through, he's not above, picking up, he sees a napkin on the floor, he's not going to walk right over it, pick it up and throw it in the trash. So even at someone at a leadership level is not above ensuring that an activation goes off without, a hitch. So I think it's important. That's a really good point you bring up. And that's a good piece of advice to someone, is that you're not above it. And I do notice it as a client when someone steps in and out of their role and helps the collective group to, pull off an activation that is sparkly.
And even as a tour manager, you can't be above a BA role. Like, it's important. Like, there's been times where I've had to step in and work as a BA, even as a tour manager. So you can't be above those roles and those titles, because those titles can quickly change within the course of one activation.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I love that piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about ROI. And we're going to be wrapping up soon, and we got some questions that we got to get to. So as far as ROI with regards to the activations that Buffalo Wild Wings execute, do you guys look at data capture? How do you measure ROI, whether that be annually or per activation, to determine if it was a value added?
Yeah. We always think it's, from a partnership and activation, we always think it's a value add, but you're right. We have to sell that in, that this is a program we want to do again, or it's a program maybe we should not do again. Those are things we have to make a decision, and our leadership is usually involved in that. So we do have KPIs, and I don't know if everyone knows what KPIs are, but key performance indicators. We try to establish those before going into an event. Experience and on-site activations, they change all the time. You could be expecting a massive crowd and your crowd's not that, large. That's just an example. So your KPIs, we usually adjust them, but we go in pretty strong with our KPIs. We do, for Buffalo Wild Wings, we have a program. A few years ago, we started bringing it on site. It's our Blaze and Rewards program. It's one of the easiest ways for us to capture data, to understand who's at our within our space. And not only that, to your point, data capture, it brings people back to our business. So a lot of our KPIs usually revolve around our Blaze and Rewards program. So getting signups, if you're already a member, did you know we can get you this offer in there, and we'll ping you with a $25 gift card after this, or those sorts of things. That's one of our main KPIs, is data capture within our Blaze and Rewards and loyalty program, because as a loyalty customer, we can get them to come in more frequently into our sports bars. So that's one of the ways. Other ways that we kind of capture, especially for major events like Final Four, for example, like conversation and engagement online. So you'll see a lot of people start to talk about the Buffalo Wild Wings space at Final Four was so cool. You will start to track engagements and conversations online. And I think we've only recently started doing that, but that's another way we can capture, information about our space. We consider it a success if people are talking about it, to be honest. There's not a whole lot to it. I think if we can get people to try our wings, to give us feedback, we'll send out surveys after the event.
That's good.
Yeah. So and data capture, if we can hit a certain number of registrations, those sorts of things. Those are some of the ways, but you're right. It is hard to know a return on investment of what I spent on this activation. Brand perception. How do you calculate brand perception? And has it changed anyone's point of view on our brand to give it a try, or to come back to our sports bar? It's hard to gauge. But I think we do a pretty good job of engaging our consumers on site and making things fun, that we always see a return on investment for things like that. So,
and then, to the point of an EXP in the field, one of the hardest things to get is someone to give you their email. And you know how people can be. It's like, are you going to spam me? What are you going to be sending me? So now the general conversation of interacting and engaging with that consumer to receive that piece of data, i.e. that email that you as a client can then use, for future promotions, or how that information will be used, it's tough, because people are so apprehensive now to give up their emails, for fear of being spammed or receiving all of the emails. So it can be tough collecting that data and knowing how to word it, especially I guess with Buffalo Wild Wings. It's more of a casual environment. People aren't so uptight or unwilling to give up their emails, because they're already, probably had a couple beers, they may have had some wings, they're having a great experience. So for them, they're already immersed in it. So it's like,
I can imagine it's probably a lot more difficult for like financial or credit card or banking. What do you like?
Automotive.
Yeah, giving that information out is probably a lot more, or getting that information from people and trying to explain that, like, no, we're not going to spam you. We're not going to take all your information. Like, that's probably a lot more difficult than what we do, to your point. But I think when we're talking about data capture, it's super important that that data capture has an experience around it. So we push our Blazing Rewards app. If we were just to say, hey, sign up for Blazing Rewards, you got to put your email. That's not going to sell it. What experience can you create around a loyalty app? Is it an offer? Is it, calling out, like, again, comes back to like knowledge of the brand. So a brand ambassador, I would fully expect, knows what the Blazing Rewards app is, has experienced the Blazing Rewards app, can talk about that Blazing Rewards app to a consumer that comes up and says, what's this? Like, oh, we just need your email and we'll like send you points. Like, that's not going to do it. But like, hey, did you check out this? This is super cool. I just redeemed points myself. Like, being able to speak to the experience and knowledge of the brand is super important. There was one thing we did. We did this, we called it Tender, on a spin on the dating app Tinder. And we would match people with their sauce, because we have 23 different sauces at Buffalo Wild Wings. So they would wipe left or wipe right on the machines. And we were capturing data information on what people liked as far as sauces go. At the end, they could put in their email for a $5 off or whatever. But making those data capture from a client side is really important for us. But selling that experience from a tour manager and a brand ambassador is also very important.
That's cool. I like that. That was a different take on Tender.
Tender, yeah. We called it Tender. And when you'd wipe, it would like literally pull up one of our wet naps, and you could wipe left or right on if you were matching with your sauce.
That's cool. And
yeah,
was it a hit?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
See, yeah.
Zing.
Yeah, because they could connect that experience with an experience they may have had on the Tinder app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so just that's a task that the client side, obviously tour managers and BAs don't have control over the actual experience, but really selling in that experience is, what we hire BAs and tour managers and, EXPers. So, that's super important for us.
How important is social media at an activation? Do you guys like to see people do hashtags or, post on their socials and tag Buffalo Wild Wings in it? Do you guys feature that as well?
Yeah, we've experimented with it a lot. The thing with hashtags, we do love social media, and we like to be I'm not in the social media department, but there was always conversations in the social media world and onsite activations. Like Final Four, for example, was supposed to be in Atlanta this year. Mm-hmm. Does anyone else care about the fact that Final Four Fan Fest is happening in Atlanta? Like, when you're talking from a national account, Buffalo Wild Wings, which spans, all 50 states, and we have locations in each state, does someone in California care that there's a Fan Fest going on in Atlanta, Georgia? Right. So it's always been, a difficult thing to kind of manage, because it's like, yes, we want people on site to start tweeting and cool experiences here. And we, as an account and a national account, we want to be able to say, hey, we're at Final Four Fan Fest, but do our fans really care? Yeah. If they're in a different state and they're not there. So we've kind of shifted a little bit and, trying to give people a little bit of behind the scenes experiences we've done in the past. Like, this is what the Final Four court looks like. This is behind the scenes that you don't get to see. We know you're not here in this Final Four city, but here's all these cool things that are happening. And then on-site specifically, we'll focus on it's usually our Blazing Challenge, since that just draws so much attention from social media. We'll post about things like our Blazing Challenge, but we will put throughout our space, hashtags and things like that, so that naturally our consumers can, start to use those hashtags and things like that. But yeah, it's really interesting, because it brings up a good point. I mean, do people care? Do I care about, the NBA All-Star game going on in Chicago this year?
And then too, with some of my activations, influencers, like influencers come out to my activations just to snap photos, do the hashtags, and convey that they're at activation just to bring other people out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it works for some markets. We had influencers that brought 50 to 100 people out there.
Mm-hmm.
And for some markets, it doesn't work. So have you guys dabbed in influencers? Or
Yeah, we've had a lot of, again, I'm speaking to Final Four, and I'm talking about Final Four a lot just because it's our brand's largest activation of the year. And I think that's where a partnership really comes into play. It's mutually benefiting both parties, right? So Final Four Fan Fest, if we decide to hire an influencer, that's bringing in traffic for a partner into their ticketed event. So yes, we've dabbled in influencers. We work out, our experiential agency usually helps us with that. We usually incorporate some sort of social integration with that to let people know that that's where they're going to be, or, post something from on site. And then, they'll usually do on-site autograph. We do autographs. We've had influencers participate in the Blazing Challenge, which is just like, I would have to, if I was an influencer, I'd be like, no, spicy wings. I'm not a spicy wing person, but I would be linking that into my contract if I was a part of the Buffalo Wild Wings activation. But we've had some brave influencers just really get involved in our experience and our activation. And I mean, tour managers love it. BAs love it. I think it just gets everybody. I mean, a lot of times people don't see that. I mean,
it creates a hype. It creates like a fun atmosphere that everybody feels like, they can enjoy and experience, because it is a experience.
Yeah. So we have a lot of fun with influencers. We do, for Final Four, we do a lot of, legendary coaches. NCAA is very restrictive on current players. We can't be doing anything with current players. They have to be like 4 years or older, but we've done a lot of NBA professionals. They obviously used to play in college. We'll bring in a lot of influencers there, but it's super fun. We try to get our influencers, obviously, that relate to, so we're at Final Four. We obviously want influencers that relate to basketball, and basketball fans would be recognizing and things like that. But they're a lot of fun. It gets the BAs and the tour managers really like, oh, look. So
as a former Division I basketball player, I know how big
NCAA restrictions.
It's crazy, and you're restricted in so many ways, but they're changing a lot of things.
They really are. So maybe we'll get a current player eventually. I don't know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But let's start taking some of these questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Miles wants to know, do you work with outside vendors for your experiential marketing activations, or is that something handled in-house?
Yeah, so we usually take recommendations from our agency. So again, I know that our agencies get pitched a lot from outside vendors and product vendors, and so that when the agency goes to pitch us, they're front line. So we work with outside vendors, and it's usually through our agency. It's funny, you kind of start talking about like internal versus external. And we recently, within the last few years, we've grown a lot within our marketing department, and we've hired a lot of, agency people within a client, which is I feel like very rare. But a lot of these people already have, since they've worked at an agency, already have a vendor. So yes and no. Majority what we do, we work through our activation agency. They seek the outside vendors. They bring it to us saying, hey, there's this cool thing that we can do at this activation. And our agency tries to sell it into us. But I think it's really interesting that some of our employees and my colleagues actually come from the agency world. So they've already had those relationships established. And to your point, sometimes it's all about who you know.
I know.
And that's foot in the door.
That could be a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, it could. It really could.
On the agency. Another question. He said, are you open to other agency reps reaching out to start building a relationship?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. And we, when I go on site to other activations, we're, especially when there's other partners involved. Again, I'm going to bring up NCAA. They have 20 some partners who also have agencies that I've gotten to know, just being in, NCAA calls themselves, their partnerships family. So like just being within the family of partnerships, I know different agencies. And that's how we got like I said, how we got our current activation agency. So yeah, I mean, I'm open to building all kinds of relationships. I think it comes to a point where you're like, I remember that person told me about that. And it's just a simple, like pulling it out of the memory bank. And I remember that they talked about that, and I need that. And call them up. So absolutely, for sure.
Okay, now Miles, I'm thinking he wants to reach out, so I'll get with him offline to get your information. And then too, I guess another question I want to ask, but let me see what else they said. Hiring agency people and putting them on the brand side is genius. Someone said it is, because you get firsthand insight into activations, into how things are done from an experiential standpoint. Mm-hmm. And speaking to your point, a lot of times you don't have clients, or not clients, you don't have CEOs or CMOs who understand experiential.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's key when you're starting from the ground up, is to get that. I've never had all client experience, so I can't even imagine not having that point of view of boots on the ground, pulling up tables and all the hard work that goes into events. I don't think you understand that when you get on the client side if you haven't had that experience. So yeah, it's I would say it's a good and a bad thing, just because corporate world is a lot. I think the biggest complaint we get from people who come from an agency and then they go into the client or corporate world is everything is so long. Like the process just takes forever. And like a lot of event people are like, let's go, let's crank out. I can like get stuff down.
Because we're used to always thinking like we're multitasking by nature.
Yeah.
Like, even now being home, it's so tough to just sit still.
Mm-hmm. And it's like you bring them into the clients or the corporate side and they're like, why is this answer taking, 4 weeks? And you're like, well, it's got to go through 20 different people. So that is coming from the event side, going on to the corporate side. I mean, we're planning, a year and a half sometimes in advance for a big activation like Final Four, where it's because it just takes so long to get things approved and for people.
Money and allocation and money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the shock that some of our agency people are like, we can usually just crank this out really quick within our small team. And you're like, oh, that's not how it works. You got to go through legal. You got to through,
simmer down.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Oh, this has been good, Ashley. Thank you so much for shedding light, because it's been refreshing to hear this from a client. So
yeah, I like to think I'm like the cooler client. If Jason's listening, like he's gonna be like, yeah, you are. But it's hard. I just try to relate to people. It's again, from having the experience, it's a lot of work what you guys do, tour managers and VAs, and I get that. And I try to bring that, empathy for that hard work when I come on site to one of our activations. But I also encourage, constructive criticism and making sure that we're trying to pull off the best activation for our brand as possible. So, it's a domino effect both ways. I think if there's something that's not working on, a BA's end or a tour manager's end, get that up to the client and client backwards down. So that's all in building relationships and all making sure that's, that relationship is really strong and trusting everybody is very important. Yeah.
All right. Last question. How has the quarantine changed the way your events are going to be executed? So it's a loaded question. So foresee activations within Buffalo Wild Wings transpiring in the next 6 months or next year?
Yeah, it's so we're a partner of the NCAA, and obviously, the NCAA was hit hard. It was one of the first leagues to kind of cancel, and we were at the finish line. We had almost planned everything, just buttoning some things up, and 2 weeks before Final Four weekend, week before the tournament started, really, everything just came crashing down, and all of our hard work from the last year just went up in flames. So our next, obviously, biggest activation is next March and April with Final Four. We're going to start probably planning for that in the fall, but we're going to have to think about it through an entirely different lens. I mean, we have the nice thing is we're a restaurant company. So we have all the, health code and everything like that. We have to get checked on site because we're dealing with food. But how we space people out, is that still going to be a thing? How we make sure that, our cleanliness is not only up to, regulation, but like, how do we go above and beyond and showing that you can trust us, you can eat our food. Wings, you eat with your hands. So how does that change things? It's, it's something we haven't really thought about yet. We're kind of coming down off of it. As far as a business perspective, we got a double whammy. I mean, we are a restaurant sports bar. We had to shut down and then forced to move to takeout and delivery. And then we're also a sports industry. So with no sports on, what are people coming to us besides, maybe a lunch or some wings to go and takeout? But double whammy for Buffalo Wild Wings. It's been difficult. And, the operations side on Buffalo Wild Wings is a completely different realm. And they have shut down 1,200 locations only to reopen them back up. It's a huge feat. But as far as our experience, it's really going to have to reflect what we're doing in the sports bar and, the regulations we're following in the sports bar. We're going to have to follow that on site so that, more hand sanitizing stations, more cleanup, that could mean face masks to have Final Four. I'm not sure what that looks like, but it's definitely going to be a very hot topic of conversation when we start approaching Final Four and March Madness for next year.
Especially eating wings with the face mask. It's like, yeah,
I know, I don't even know. Hey, maybe we find a face mask where you can eat a wing.
That'll be cool. Or
drink a beer. Yeah, drink a beer through a face mask. I don't know. We might have to. You guys know any outside vendors that's going to make face masks?
That would be cool.
Yeah,
cool design concepts.
But yeah, I think with the pandemic and the quarantine and everything like that, we really are trying to understand how this has changed people's behavior, especially in the dining world, and that's going to have to reflect on site that behavior change. So,
So outside of all of this, for y'all who don't know, Ashley is a equality activist. She fights for equal rights for all. That's just something that I know from our last Discrimination in America video. Make sure you go watch it. But aside from that, what are your hobbies? Besides working for Buffalo Wild Wings, what do you like to do in your spare time when you're not on activations and stuff?
I have a dog. I know everyone's like, oh wow, here's a dog, cool. I have a 10-year-old dog, so we like to get out and about. I live in the city, so I love trying new restaurants, which has just been a really difficult thing right now with it not being open, but love trying new restaurants. I love. I'm from Minneapolis originally, so land of 10,000 plus lakes. There's not many lakes here in Georgia, so I try to get outside as much as I can here. People keep telling me, it's so funny. Everyone keeps telling me the Minnesota guilt that you have will go away, because whenever it's nice and sunny here and I'm inside, I'm like, I gotta get outside. I gotta go on a hike. I gotta go walk around. We gotta go walk. We gotta go on the lake. We gotta canoe. We gotta camp. So I have that Minnesota guilt, because obviously in Minnesota, summer is only 3 months, and here it's 3/4 of the year. So everyone's like, you'll get over the summer guilt. But I love getting outside. I love trying new restaurants. Quarantine, I've been reading a lot. So yeah, I just pretty basic stuff. But yeah, me and my dog down here in Atlanta.
Nothing basic. And shoot, we all have to find time, and we found a lot of things that we can do during this quarantine that keeps us busy. So,
I know. Yeah, and I live alone, and yeah, it's I'm trained for this, but also I'm not, because now I'm my outlet has been going and meeting with friends and going to getting out of the house, and now I'm stuck in the house myself, and I'm like, if I'll read, I don't know.
Or swiping right and left, but
you're swiping right, left, yeah, wiping right, left, yeah.
You know who has what, so you got to be
yeah. And then I'm like, what's the point of this? I won't see you for 6 months.
It's interesting times right now, but
yeah, it is.
I appreciate you. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys. This has been fun. I've never been really asked these questions from a client side, and I appreciate the intrigue and curiosity surrounding the client side. So it's been fun.
So EXPs, let me read. Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us. So we had great feedback. We had a great response. And again, Ashley, just thank you as a client for coming on tonight and shedding your insight on what it takes for EXPs to not only understand your world, but to see it from different eyes. Because sometimes when we look at it from our lenses, it looks completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys. We as the clients know that we appreciate our EX peers. So
Thank
you guys do good work.
All right, you guys be safe, EXPs. Enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, you are a brand within a brand. So represent yourself accordingly. Later.
Bye, guys. Thank you.